Sheila Jackson Lee, thank you so very much. You are a leader in all of these issues. You've often and almost always present these issues to the American people on the floor of the House, and you do it with passion and knowledge. It's an hour spent earlier by our colleagues with about the 37th time they're going to attempt to repeal the Affordable Health Care Act. And it reminded me that they also have a piece of legislation to end Medicare as we know it. And you go back to when Medicare was put in place in the 60s, 64, 65, the Republican Party opposed it then and have often through those years to this date attempted various ways to eviscerate or to end it as we know it. Apparently they're going to try to do the same thing with the Affordable Health Care Act, and it's such a waste of time because these programs are so fundamental to our ability to survive. This is health care for Americans, and spreading that opportunity out. It's a long discussion. We've had that discussion on the floor for many, many days. But what we really ought to be focusing on is putting Americans back to work. This piece of legislation is one of about 30 pieces of legislation that's put in by the Democratic caucus. This is mine. It deals with your tax money. Simply says it's going to be spent on American-made clean energy, solar panels, wind turbines, and the like. Not a bad idea to spend your tax money on American-made equipment, American jobs, American businesses. There's another bill that I have dealing with the transportation system. Same thing. And that bill is now finding its way into the rewrite of the highway transportation program, the transportation bill, and hopefully it'll be there. A very strong Buy American provision so that our buses, our trains, our light rail, our locomotives, steel and concrete for bridges. We've got a lot of work to do in America. We've got a lot of work and a lot of need. And this House ought to be spending its time on that. We'll take another night. We'll go into this, the tax policy side of this, which there's a lot to be said about changing our taxes to encourage manufacturing. Some of that has been done. I'll leave one example, and that is 2 years ago, when the Democrats controlled this House, we eliminated about $12 billion of tax breaks that American companies received for shipping American jobs overseas. We put a stop to that. There's about another $5 billion that needs to be done, but we no longer control this House. But we ought to bring those jobs back home. We ought to flip that over and give a tax break for reshoring, bringing the jobs back to America. That's another night's discussion. We'll take that up in another evening. But for tonight, it's about putting Americans back to work. It's about focusing the attention of this chamber, the 435 of us, on what we really need in this country, which is a very strong, growing economy. And we've seen progress every quarter since the beginning of 2010. Every quarter, we've seen private sector employment grow. We're not where we ought to be. We have more work to do. And when we finally rebuild the American manufacturing sector, when once again we make it in America, Americans are going to make it. Thank you. And Mr. Speaker, I yield back my time.